Well, Nancy, let's talk about forgiveness today.
Okay.
It took me a long time to understand what it means to forgive someone. But after a lot of soul searching, I realized forgiveness is not about accepting or excusing their behavior. It's about letting it go and preventing their behavior from destroying my heart. You know, a lot of times we look at forgiveness.
You're forgiven, by the way.
Yeah, I just dropped the phone here.
No, you're forgiven.
The mic's not very forgiving right now.
No.
But we always look at forgiveness as the other person. But what that really brought out, it's the behavior.
James, it kind of goes back to a podcast we did earlier that's called Forgive and Forget. Forgive or Forget. And I think in that podcast, we also kind of talked about sometimes we have a tendency to forget. And we say it's forgiveness, where we just say it never happened, or, this person didn't mean it. And so we make those kind of excuses, and then it happens again, and it brings all the pain back up. And so exactly what you're saying. We look at forgiveness. Well, that person needs to ask me for forgiveness in order for me to forgive the person. Or I just can't forgive that person because what that person did to me, I can't forgive that person. Because we kind of believe that if we forgive that person, it kind of lets them off of the violation. Mm-hmm. But it's not for the other person. Forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for ourselves.
Correct. And the behavior, what it talks about here, behavior would be the violation. Mm-hmm. And how does that violation, if we don't forgive it, how does that hang on? How does that destroy our heart?
James, we really talk about in emotional intelligence that we don't really look at people's behavior. People's behaviors are symptoms of something deeper. When we hold people's behavior accountable to them, and we hold on to that, and we don't let that go, it doesn't destroy them. It destroys us. It keeps us, because we're so busy focusing on what this other person did or what this other person has done to me. We're so busy focusing on that we're not focusing on us moving forward. So, and again, if a person isn't growing, a person is dying. If you're not growing and expanding, you're dying. We were created to grow. We were created to continue to push forward. So what it does to us is it keeps us right there in our spot. But it goes on even farther as we talk about in emotional intelligence. Okay. That person, not only does it keep us where we're at, we don't go any farther, but also that person has a tremendous amount of control over us. Because everything we do revolves around not letting go of that person's behavior that they did to us. Everything we do. It consumes us. It takes priority of us. And as we do that, bits and bits and bits of our soul continue to erode until finally you don't know who you are. Because you have become this person that you're so, and it really comes down to bitterness. Bitterness is bitterness is like drinking a poison and expecting the other person to die. That's really what bitterness is. So when we hold on to someone's whatever they did to us and we're not willing to forgive them, forgiving means we release them. We release them. That's forgiveness. It's not for them, it's for us. So that we can say, you know what, this moment is not going to define us. We're going to move forward. That is what forgiveness means. So if we don't do that, we're going to continue everything about us. That person starts consuming everything about us because we're not releasing that person.
So in some sense, it's not letting go of the past.
It's in all sense not letting go of the past.
Okay.
I mean, we know this very clearly, James. Okay. If we've had a parent who has hurt us tremendously in our childhood, and we don't release that parent, we hold on to it, it can become a crutch. Oftentimes it becomes a crutch. But more so, it gives us an excuse that we are like this because my dad was this way or my mom was this way. That's why I'm like I am. Because we do that, because we don't release our parents, when we have children, we're going to do the same thing. That's how generation curse happen. Because we're so busy focusing on how our father did us wrong or how our mother did us wrong that we are putting that very same pain into our children. And it will continue. That's what forgiveness does. If we say, you know what? Yes, this is my past. Yes, this is what my father did. Or yes, this is what my mom did. And if we say, because they did this, I am now I choose to be where I'm at because they did this. Okay, if we take that attitude, then we have broken that chain. We have broken that chain, and we're going to focus on being exactly the kind of mother we wanted for ourselves to have. We're going to focus on being that kind of mother for our children. The kind of father we wanted ourselves to have, we're going to focus on being that kind of father for our children. We can't do that if we don't release them. So, yes, that's basically what happens, is everything about it consumes us.
So let's talk about, instead of holding on to the past, let's talk about what does it mean to learn from the past? What does that look like?
Everything is a choice. Okay? And so we can go through, that's why I don't have a degree in psychology, but I love studying psychology. It's so fascinating because you can never say that if you are raised this way, you're going to turn out this way. Because by the time they say that, your chances are of turning out like this, someone comes and breaks that mold. Why? Because of a choice. It's a choice. So we can either choose to hold on to the past and allow the past to consume us and rob us of our future, or we can make the choice that we're going to learn from our past, like I went back to the parents, okay? So because my dad did this or my mom did this, I don't want to be that, right? So I'm going to learn because I know what it feels like for me, the child pain that it did. So I'm going to choose not to put that pain onto my child. That's learning from the past. And if it's, a tragedy happens, there's always things that we can learn from the past. But it's a choice. It's a choice. We can say the past can define us two ways, and it's all a choice. It can define us by keeping us in it. That's one way. Or it can define us and say, because this is how I was raised, or because of this tragedy, this is where I'm at today. And which is hope, right? But it's a choice. It's a choice.
So what we're seeing in our culture today, though, it looks like, where does this fit in to where they're getting rid of statues and monuments of our leaders of the past because they were bad people, so to speak?
Well, there's also a saying out there that says that if you don't look at the history, you're going to repeat itself. So when we choose not to look, that's the thing, okay? So there's also that fact that we can just erase our history, right? We can try to erase our history. Never happened, right? But if we don't take the time to actually embrace it and to actually feel it, we're going to repeat it. We're going to repeat it because we never looked at what caused it in the first place. So when we're out there trying to erase the history, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to erase the history. When we're trying to erase the history, what we're doing is we're putting ourselves in danger of repeating exactly what we're trying to erase. Instead of taking a look at it saying, okay, what caused this? What caused this to happen?
Then it doesn't mean that everything that these leaders did was wrong, correct? There were some very good things that we look at our past that made us where we're at today.
Well, that's a true statement. That's a true statement.
Somehow we take the violation because we don't let the violation go. That's the only thing we look at when we see in our past.
Well, everything has a history. Everything has a history. So when we look at the history to understand the present and to hope for the future. If you try to erase the history, then you're not going to understand the present, and you're not going to be able to hope for the future. Because our history, good and bad, right? Good and bad, paved the way for the future. And so that's the thing. When we erase the history, then we can't hope for the future. Because where did you come from? We all come from somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. That's our history. We don't know where we came from. How do we know where we're going?
And what does that look like for an individual to say, okay, I came through my legacy or my heritage? You can't throw your heritage away. I mean, you can choose to. But and I think sometimes we can get caught in that is not value our heritage, the good and the bad.
Well, again, can you technically throw your heritage away? I mean, that's the thing. Okay, so that would basically be you would technically throw away your ancestors.
Yeah.
Is that even possible?
I don't know.
That's the question. Is that even possible? Okay, so if you're going to erase your history, you erase everything with it, right? So it's like you are today, where you're at today, is all you have. So how are you going to know how you got to where you're at today if you erased your history? Again, how are you going to know where you came from to knowing where you're going if you erase your history?
But I think emotionally, there's a tendency, if we don't let go, there's a tendency of doing that. We don't want to look exactly what you said earlier. We're hanging on the crutches. And then we're not looking at the legacy that we're called as people to move forward with.
That's where emotional intelligence comes in, okay? Because basically, emotionally, you can try to push those down. And we've talked about this in so many of the podcasts. You can continue to try to push your history down, the violations. You can continue to try to push them down. You can't erase them. You cannot erase them. It's impossible to erase them unless you erase your entire memory. Right? Mm-hmm. It's impossible to erase them because the thing of it is there's triggers that come up. There's triggers that come up that's going to stir that up. And you're not going to understand why you're being triggered if you don't understand your history. Mm-hmm. And it's even been told, and this is very fascinating, but it's even been told, you know how when you have nails on the chalkboard, it just sends shivers through you, right? There has been some theories about the reason why that happens is because possibly way, way back when humanity first came, it could have been some kind of animal that scratched a rock and you knew it was danger. So it continues to go in. My point being, that's how you can't erase history. It follows you. You can erase it from your mind. That's what I'm saying. No one can say, well, yeah, we can go back to that because, like I said, but it's still going to be part of you. It's still going to be part of you. You're going to react to something that you have no clue why you're reacting to that because it comes from your history.
So one of the things I'm hearing, Nancy, I think another very important part of this, as we look at our past, it's easy to look at the other person. But also, we have to look at ourselves, exactly what you're saying when we start emotional cleansing. And I think it's almost impossible to forgive other people unless we're willing to forgive ourselves.
The hardest thing to do, James, is actually forgive ourselves.
Let's talk a little bit about what that looks like.
I would actually, what you said was impossible to forgive others if you don't forgive yourselves. No, honestly, you are more apt to forgive others than you are to forgive yourself. Because it's easier, exactly what you said, James, to look at the other person, right? It's easier to point the finger at the other person. And we know the saying, when I point one finger at you, I have three fingers pointing back at me. It's those three fingers that is really, really hard for us to take a look at. Because in order for me to forgive myself, I have to take personal responsibility for where I'm at today, the choices I made, and what got me to where I'm at today. That is what is very hard. It's easier for me to point the finger and say somebody else did that. But here's the thing: when I'm saying that, I'm saying that that other person has tremendous amount of power. Has tremendous amount of power, because if I am where I'm at because somebody else put me here, then that somebody else is. Then I have to wait for that somebody else to move me forward. Right? That's the power. That's the power. And trust me, that person doesn't care about me enough to move me forward. They're not going to do that. So I'm going to sit here. But amazing things happen when you start looking at yourself and you start saying, you know what? I am the problem, therefore I am the solution. I am the one who got myself here based on choices, whether it was conscious choices or subconscious choices. I'm here based on choices. I can move forward based on choices. So today doesn't have to define where I'm going to end up. It's not my destiny. I have the power to change my destiny based on knowing, again, where I came from. And when I know where I came from, where do I want to head? Where am I going? And where do I want to head to? That's going to be the one that's going to navigate my choices moving forward. And I have the power to do that. But if I'm pointing the finger at someone else and saying someone else is the problem, they're the ones who got me here, guess what? I'm sorry, but you're just going to stay there forever because they don't really care about you that much. They really don't.
Yeah, there's tremendous, and a lot of times we need to forgive others' wrongdoings. But really, where the true freedom is when you're able to forgive yourself. Because at the end of the day, we give power to people.
We give our power away.
We do. I mean, and there are times where we have been powerless, but for the most part, at the end of the day, what did we examine ourselves, and what did we do to get in that situation? Mm-hmm. And the tremendous amount of freedom is, first of all, looking at myself.
Yes.
Taking exactly what you're saying, taking radical responsibility. Mm-hmm. And that out of that comes tremendous amount of freedom.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, then your accusers don't have to apologize. You've already forgiven them.
Yep.
Because but we don't talk a lot about starting with forgiving ourselves.
No, because again, it's like, what? I actually have to forgive myself? Oh, I've done that. Have you really? Have you really? Because you can't forgive yourself if you don't know what you did. So in order to forgive yourself, you have to actually look at what did you do.
So in essence, we're not letting go of behavior. We're letting go of our own personal baggage that's destroying our heart. When we're not forgiving ourselves, our shame. We're not willing to take that hard look at ourselves.
When we're not willing to take that hard look at ourselves, we are not going to grow. We're not going to learn at all what got us here. And we're going to continue to be chasing ghosts. Mm-hmm. Everyone else is out to get me. Mm-hmm. Everyone is a bad person. Everyone is a bad person. Everyone else is out to get me. And all you're doing is chasing ghosts. That's all you're doing. Because the truth of it is, you do not want to look in the mirror. And where you are, there you are. Where you go, there you go. You cannot not be with you. So you might as well love yourself, because that's who you're spending the rest of your life with. And if you want to take yourself wherever you go, one of the signs is that something is wrong is if everyone is out. When you take yourself all over the place and people are wronging you all over the place, that may be a sign you need to kind of look at yourself. Mm-hmm. Because everyone is going to wrong you. And because the truth of it is, you are wronging yourself. You're not being true to yourself. If you're not true to yourself, you can't be true to others. That's where you can't be true to others around you. So you have to be true to yourself. You have to be you.
Or you can go the other way and spend most of your life trying to atone for your sins, trying to make it right.
Okay. Explain that.
In other words, I'm not willing to face what I did wrong. So if I just perform and work extremely hard or become successful, that would atone for for my wrongdoing.
And that is not necessarily that that's not necessarily that you're not looking at yourself, okay? That isn't necessarily saying that because, again, you are looking at yourself and you're taking everything onto yourself, right? That, what you need to look in that aspect is where are you giving your power away to? Because if you are constantly, I have to work harder. I have to work, I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to do this. Then I'll feel good about myself. Somebody has power over you. You've given your power away. And you may see your flaws, but you're not seeing where your power, you're not seeing where the power is. Who took your power? Those would be voices we talked about in some of the podcasts. Those would be the voices that continue to tell you, okay, if you do this, then you're going to be loved. If you do this, then you're going to be loved. No. Nobody can give you happiness. Only you can give yourself happiness. Nobody can make you feel loved. Only you can make you feel loved. If I don't love myself and I have others around me that love me, I can't receive that. I cannot receive that. I cannot receive the love for myself until I myself love myself. So I cannot depend on other people to make me happy because they're not going to make me happy. I myself have to do that. So you have to ask yourself, where are you giving your power away? Who's speaking into that, and where are you giving that power away?
So then what would you say to a person that would say this? Most of the scars on people's hearts weren't left by their enemies. They were left by people that claimed to love them the most. How do you walk through that?
James, by looking at yourself. That's the only way. Because it is an ultimate betrayal when you believe that others loved you. And they would tell you that they loved you. It's an ultimate betrayal when you realize that they really weren't. The only way you can walk through that is by yourself, focusing on yourself and yourself only. And what does it come to? Personal responsibility. First thing. How did I allow myself to be mistreated? Because fake love, which that's what that is, fake love disrespects. So if I don't respect myself, if I don't have healthy boundaries, then I'm going to allow people to walk all over myself, right? Which then leaves me susceptible to that, quote, fake love. Mm-hmm. So that I cannot, if I focus on what they did, and I focus on the betrayal of what they did, I may never want to live again. I cannot focus.
Correct.
I cannot focus on what they did. I focus on what I did. I focus on what I am going to do moving forward. How am I going to rise out of this? What did I learn? What did I learn? Right? Number one thing that I learned is to look for that fake love, right? Because they all have the same symptoms. So that's something I learned. I also learned to have healthy boundaries. And I also learned to look for authentic. But in order for me to have authentic people around me, I have to be authentic. And see, and that's the thing that means, okay, when I am surrounded by fake love, I also am fake love. Because authentic people do not want to be around fake people. So if I want to get out of this, I need to be true to myself. I can only change. Again, I can't change anyone around me. I can change myself, right? That's the only thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to take my power back. I'm going to take my power back. And I'm not going to focus on what they did. Doesn't mean I leave them off the hook. That's not what I'm talking about, leaving them off the hook. Because leaving them off the hook is meaning you're going to go back in there with them. No, you're never going to associate with them again. Because now you know what you know. When you know something about a person, you can never unknow it, right? Right? Yes, you can forgive them, but forgiving them doesn't mean you trust them. Doesn't mean you go back into the relationship, because the relationship will never be the same. So that's the thing. I don't want to, again, authentic people do not associate with fake people. So if I want to be with authentic people, I have to be authentic myself, which means I have to be true to myself. So that's the only way I can get out of that is I have to focus on myself. I have to change myself and exactly ask myself the really hard questions, the questions that we don't like to ask ourselves, but we have to ask ourselves. What did I do to get myself here? How did I allow this to happen? And what am I going to do about moving forward? Not what are they going to do? What am I going to do about moving forward?
And we brought it to that place because I know there's a lot of people that have been hurt by the people closest to them.
Mm-hmm.
And as leaders, that's probably one of the hardest things when you don't see it in your own home court.
Yes.
And what you have just given us is a pathway to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Any other great wisdom for today, Nancy?
No, James, this was a very great conversation.
It was.
I enjoyed it.
And it's really heavy.
It's a very heavy conversation. And I definitely, my greatest wish is that this can fall on someone's ears, that they can be in that situation. They can recognize some of these signs that we were talking about. Or maybe you're one of those that you have been holding on to a person. You don't want to forgive them. Maybe this message can help you, set you free, that you can learn to let this person go. Because it's not this person you're hurting, it's yourself.
Or maybe you're a person that doesn't feel that it's good to exactly what you talked about, disassociate from these fake people.
Exactly.
That you continue to go back because you think it's wrong to disassociate, to disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
That's another trap.
Well, that is, and the truth of it is, in that situation, you'll have to ask yourself, who is telling you that it's wrong? Is it you? Or is it them? And that's where it comes down to the fact of being true to yourself. What are your core values? Part of being true to yourself is what exactly is your core value? What exactly is your morals? Not what is everybody else's morals, not what is everybody else's core values. What exactly is your core values? What exactly is your morals? And then living those out.
Yeah. It's definitely finding out who you are in a real way.
Yes.
Based on principles, the total you.
Exactly.
OrangeRoseServices.com. Check us out. Email us a line if we've challenged your thinking or if you would like some feedback. James at OrangeRoseServices.com. Have a great week.